Thanks. My name's Tim and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tim.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me here. My date of sobriety is the 24th of July, 1993. My home group is Brick Lane on a Saturday. If anything I say is helpful, well, splendid. And if it's not, I wouldn't worry about it. People do have different takes on things, and that's allowed. To talk about the physical craving, it requires a bit of a context. And the context is the whole picture of step one. And what I know from my experience of drinking, my drinking started in the mid-80s when I was at school and continued until 1993. What I know is a couple of basic facts. When I drink buckets, and when I go into a drinking phase, I'm going to be in that drinking phase as long as the drinking phase decides. I don't pull myself back out of it. I find myself washed up sober at some point. But that's not in my power. So if I were to drink tonight, I couldn't come back to AA as an act of the will. If I were able to, that would be a gift. The impulse itself would be a gift. I can't summon the impulse. I had evidence from when Mrs. Thatcher was Prime Minister that I should stop drinking. But I had to wait until John Major was Prime Minister before I actually stopped. So coming to AA and stopping has got nothing to do with evidence. I didn't come to AA because the evidence accumulated and I made a decision. If that was the case, it would have happened years before, but it didn't. So it's something else. So I've got to be very careful about drink and about other substances too, because they'll take me back. And some other behaviours, but I won't mention those. Not in the house of God. Not in a place with such fine mouldings on the ceiling. That's for East London. So far, so good. The real problem, however, is the fact that there is a bit of my mind which is hell-bent on taking me back to drinking. And the experience of AA, what the AA programme seeks to do is to provide me with a defence against that. If you imagine a runaway train heading for an abyss, and now you imagine there's a great big lever, those red levers, the emergency brake, because the ordinary brakes don't work on me. I can't stop myself. The ordinary brakes don't work. There is an emergency brake, the big red lever, and that, like it or lump it, is God. What God is you work that out for yourselves. I'm not going to give you a lesson in theology. It's just a good short code word, the word God, for that thing. That's the emergency lever. But to pull it, there's a piece of glass in the way stopping me. What's that piece of glass? My ego, myself, my self-will, this so-called spiritual malady. Now that's not part of my alcoholism. That's universal. If you read the papers or look on social media, you'll find people outside AA just as immature and messed up as most of us within AA, at least when we get here. So that's not exclusive to AA. That's a universal human phenomenon. Other people can get away with that grinding misery and self-righteousness and all those other things associated with the self. They can get away with that. I can't, because it is in the way of the only thing which can get in the way of a drink for me. Now, the physical craving, where that sits in the whole system, is a theory in the doctor's opinion in the big book, where it's discussed at length. And the value of a theory, as it were, is not theoretical. The question is, does it answer the question it's there to answer? If it does, it is a good theory, or at least it's the best theory we have. And the question that asks itself when I look at my drinking is this: why did I drink so much when I drank? Why couldn't I just stop at 1.5 bottles of wine? Why was it 3 bottles of wine? Why couldn't I stop at half a dozen gins and tonics? Why did I have to drink the whole bottle of gin? Why, when I started drinking in the September, was it not until the January, a year and a half later, that I stopped? Why is that? And there's a line in the doctor's opinion which is tremendous, because it really contains everything. And it's this: it didn't satisfy us to be told that we couldn't control our drinking. Then it gives 3 possible reasons. Just because we were A, maladjusted to life, B, in full flight from reality, or C, outright mental defectives. Now that's something of a sentence. That's got a lot of words in it. What that means is people would tell me, oh, the reason you're doing it is because you're unhappy, or you're thick, or you're mad. Now, I wasn't thick. I was pretty mad in lots of ways by the end of my drinking, but I wasn't mad at the beginning of my drinking. I wasn't psychotic. I didn't think myself a turnip. I didn't think I was Napoleon. I wasn't mad. I wasn't unable to reason. So those two, we have to throw those out. Being unhappy, if you'd asked me when I was drinking, why do you drink so much? I would have said it's because I'm tremendously unhappy, maladjusted to life. That, to me, explained it. But it doesn't explain it, because it doesn't explain why, when the drink wasn't working, I would carry on. It doesn't explain why I drank too much when I was having a great time and knew if I had the 3rd bottle, all hell would break loose. It doesn't account for the facts. It also doesn't account for why all of my friends when I was 18 or 19 were as miserable as I was. Why? Because they were my friends. None of them were alcoholic, and none of them had this reaction to alcohol. So why? And they loved it too. So it wasn't because I particularly liked it. I actually didn't like it in lots of ways, because sometimes it would be amazing, and other times it would just take me to very, very dark places. So it's not even accurate to say, well, it's because I really, really, sometimes I really liked it. Often I didn't. When I hated it, I still did it. It's not a satisfactory explanation. And I've known happy drinkers. I've known people who had idyllic childhoods who became alcoholic, whose problem really just was alcohol. They get sober and they're not neurotic and immature and incompetent and late for everything. Nothing else. There's no other explanation. It wasn't peer pressure. It wasn't my childhood. It wasn't any of those things. That's not why I drank the amount that I drank, because there are counterexamples on all the way through AA. So why? Why do I do it? Doctor's opinion. You're built like it. That's simply how you react to alcohol. And suddenly we have something which accounts for the facts. It gets all of the facts in and leaves none of them out. So when it says a physical craving, I misunderstood it because I didn't read it properly. I misunderstood it, and I thought it meant you somehow sensed it physically, and it doesn't mean that at all. It means that the origin of the craving is physical. It's embedded in the body somewhere beyond the reach of the mind. And the brain is part of the body. It comes from somewhere deep inside the brain. Have another one, have another one, have another one, have another one. And it hasn't got anything to do with what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking. It's just this override that goes straight over the top. And craving, it's a funny old word, because normally craving, when people are in the office in the afternoon, they say, well, I'm having a craving for chocolate. They haven't had any chocolate. The craving arises, they have the chocolate, the craving goes away. Whereas this is something which is triggered by having a drink. I can have the plan, I'm just going to have a nice quiet evening with some friends, a few bottles of wine, it'll be fine. I have one, And it's like there's a personality change and the little monster just wants to really go for it. And these little people who were my friends half an hour ago are not interesting enough and I'm roving. Something happens to me when I have a drink. The craving is not for the drink, it's created by the drink. And drink doesn't satisfy it because you give it some and it says it wants more. It's not satisfying. That's the whole point. If it satisfied me, I'd stop at one. But it doesn't satisfy. It tells you it's going to satisfy you after the next one. But it never does satisfy. That's the whole point of it. And people have different experiences. This is just my experience. If it helps, it helps. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's fine. So that's the problem, is that when I have a drink, I'm off to the races. So I must never have another drink. However, there's a bit of my brain which is going to want a drink. And again, you look at the stories in the big book, Fred, Jim, the certain American businessman, the man of 30, they were not having bad days. They were having ordinary days or great days, and they had a drink. What it says about all of the excuses for drinking that alcoholics give, and I gave myself lots of excuses, is none of them make real sense in the light of the havoc that an alcoholic's drinking bout produces. And I can't trace my drinking to how I felt, or circumstances, or childhood, or trauma, or any of those things, however true any of those circumstances are. Because the point of my drinking is that it was insane. It's not that I was sanely responding to a particular emotion. The effect of my alcoholism on every aspect of my life told me, full evidence, day after day, month after month, year after year, this is a really bad idea, but in the moment it seemed like a really good idea. This is the nature of compulsion. And once one realises one's under compulsion, once I realised that I was drinking because I was compelled to by some monstrous parasite within me, which was alcoholism, the game was pretty much up. It was only a matter of time before I buckled down and did what AA said. But so how did alcohol keep me in its grip for so long? Because it told a lie and I believed the lie. I believed I was drinking because it helped. I really believed it. No one else around me believed it helped because they could see the evidence even on a particular day, let alone the effect of alcohol across my life. On a particular day, I'd be depressed, I'd be anxious, I'd have a drink, and I'd be worse after the drink, and I'd know it and they'd know it. And yet in the anticipation of the next drink the next day, oh, it's because I'm depressed. The desire, the impulse, the compulsion to have the drink came first. The alibi came afterwards. That's how it got me to have the first drink, because the truth wouldn't get me there. And so I'm the least reliable witness. When I would spin all of these stories for why I drank, I was the least reliable witness as to why I was doing it. And so all my narratives about the why have stopped. Why did I have the first drink? Because I was alcoholic. Why did I have the rest of them? Because I was alcoholic. Now, what are we going to do about it? God seems to come into it. And where the defence is not being given very sensible thoughts so that I can think things through and look at things rationally. It's a visceral repulsion. It's my seeing my feet walking in the right direction away from the drink. I remember even years sober thinking, I was walking to church on a Sunday morning and I was thinking, I can't be bothered with everything. I can't be bothered with life. I can't be bothered to live. It was a bad day. And I looked down and I thought, look at my silly little legs continuing to walk to church. I don't know why I'm doing this. And that's what the defence against alcohol is like. It's not up here, because that's where the problem is. It comes in and it simply prevents me. And the rest of the programme is for me to establish a relationship with that power by making myself subservient to it. So